Hey everybody, today I thought we'd go over one of my favorite things about role-playing games and Dungeons & Dragons. Rules. There's a lot of rules in D&D that can really enhance story, role-playing, and flavor, and today I wanted to talk about some that I really like that I've used throughout the years and continue to use to this day. We're going to be going over some third-party books, but also some D&D books. I just want to point out that I wasn't paid by anybody to make this video about a rule in their book. This is just me genuinely talking about rules and mechanics that I like. I'll be having timestamps in the description so you guys can skip ahead if you want to look at some of the rules I'm going to talk about, or you're just like, this guy's talking too long. Next rule. Book time. I just leave these right here the whole time. So I'm not gonna go over like every rule that I use in my games. For the most part, we play like pretty default 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons, which, you know, guys, can we just talk about 5th edition for a second? Just like two seconds before we start this video. I just want to point out that I think it's really dumb that everybody's talking about 6th edition. I don't think that WotC is going to release a 6th edition. I think that's what these new books have been, these reprints of 5e that they've already released. It's just its own edition now, but it's not really 5th edition either, because if you notice on a lot of the marketing, they're not calling it 5th edition. They're just calling it Dungeons & Dragons. So I don't think we need to panic about there being a brand new edition that we all have to learn and suddenly get used to. I think they're just gonna update 5th edition to just be Dungeons & Dragons, because it'd be really stupid if they decided to change everything about the system that currently everybody plays and really, really likes. Okay, I got that out of my system. We're gonna stop talking. We're gonna talk about good things today. We're trying to be more positive here on XP to level 3. I've been very positive on XP to level 3. Where's my trophy? Where is my award for being positive? No, I genuinely want to make a video today about stuff that I like in D&D. I've just been seeing a lot of mechanics that I've been using in games, and I'm like, these deserve recognition, and that's what this video is. We're giving recognition to the rules and to the people who wrote this genius role-playing game. So first off, we're gonna start with Icewind Dale, Rime of the Frost Maiden. First of all, adventure, great, love it so far. Playing it on Arcane Arcade, it's a great time. And one of my favorite mechanics to come from this book is actually the encounter tables in chapter 2. It details a lot of locations that your players can go to, and there's side quests, and it's sort of this open world in the frozen tundra of the Icewind Dale. And it's really great. And there's one portion of it that has random encounters. And what I love about it is it's just one table. It's just one table with a bunch of stuff that you can encounter. But one of the coolest parts about this encounter is that it takes into account the weather. Now, I've always had a really difficult time with weather in D&D because I feel like it's really hard to manage, and sometimes it doesn't really make a difference. It's like, oh, there's wind. So if you guys use a bow, you're gonna have disadvantage. Like, I don't know, it's not that big of a deal. It's more of like a flavor thing, if anything. But Icewind Dale does a great job at managing blizzards, because blizzards are really dangerous to travel in. Sometimes you can travel in blizzards and you walk slower and the visibility is reduced and you can't hear anything and it's easier for creatures to stealth. But when are you supposed to have encounters in a blizzard? In Rime of the Frost Maiden, instead of just rolling 1d20 and that being your encounter, you roll 2 d20s, one of them being your encounter dice, one of them being your blizzard dice. If the blizzard dice exceeds the number on the encounter dice, that means that the encounter takes place in a blizzard, which first of all is just a really easy way to calculate if you're gonna be in a blizzard or not. And second of all, they made the table specifically so that certain encounters are more likely to be in a blizzard than others. For example, a Yeti is a 1, meaning that a Yeti will always be encountered in a blizzard, while Perytons, or a herd of beasts, or humans are higher up on the table, meaning it's less likely to encounter them in a blizzard, which makes sense. Perytons fly around. They wouldn't be flying around in the middle of a blizzard. While right dead in the middle is our Arveraturus, who, you know, is 50% chance of being in a blizzard. She's a big ass flying dragon, and she might just swoop down in the middle of a blizzard and that'd be a bad time. I think that that is just such a simple, ingenious way to create different kinds of encounters. It's also really cool because it details in the encounter. So you roll and then you go to the thing, on the page, and then it details if it's any different inside of a blizzard. I think that this is just a really simple, ingenious way to have a variety of wilderness encounters. And I think that's cool. So great job, Icewind Dale, Rime of the Frost Maiden. Next up, we got this little book called Stibble's Codex of Companions. In case you didn't know, the Runesmith wrote this book, and gosh dang, I gotta say, it's quite good. It's a book filled with a bunch of monsters, and it's awesome. It's got little beasts and monsters and little guys, and they can be your pets. You got everything from small demon creatures to oozlings to baby owlbears to possums. But my favorite mechanic in the entirety of the book that Logan put in here is, let me see, hang on, I'm finding it, is bonding with your companions. How many times do your players have pets, or are you a player character with a pet and you want it to be more than just a one hit point creature that sometimes gives your character a little bit of flavor? Well, in Stibble's Codex of Companions, you can actually bond with your companion, and bonding with them levels them up, and you can give them abilities along with more hit points, and they can actually become like a useful member of the party. For example, in our Evenfall campaign, Logan played Stibbles and then he died, but he had a small tree son by the name of Stibbles Jr. There's a little figure of him. And throughout the game, the party has been leveling him up, and Stibbles Jr. can now like cast Entangle, and he can create good berries like from his tree head. He's not just like, let's roll initiative, where's Stibbles Jr.? He's in danger constantly. There's a lot of really cool feats and abilities that are not just spells that you can give to your companions. You can also lose bond strength by being a big old stinky head to your little beast companion friend, and that's not very cool, so don't do that. But yeah, you can do everything from making them have fairy tricks to getting angry to having dueling abilities or armor. There's also companion personalities, which is really fun, and you can give them basically like a background or like a feat effectively, and it depends on what their personality is, which is like grumpy, energetic, clever, creative, impulsive, moody. It's fun, it's a great time. I highly recommend you check it out. Have you guys ever heard of this little book called The Dungeon Master's Guide? Okay, yeah, it's the fucking 5th edition DM's guide, I know, but everybody knacks on this book. I just want to say that there's some really good stuff in the DM's guide. Two things I want to bring up. First of all, I love that they give a really good breakdown of cities. Cities are such a difficult thing for me to write sometimes because it's just overwhelming. There's so much stuff there. It's a center of populace. You don't know what to throw in there. And the DM's guide has so much inspiration that just gives you a canvas to create what you want to create within a city, a village, or a town. I like that they also give you a lot of examples, and they give you like tables in which you can change up your city to make it a little different from every other city. But one of my favorite parts about the 5th edition Dungeon Master's Guide, page 292, you can create dungeons. I love this so much. Much like a city, whenever I have a dungeon, I need like a jumping point. I can't just like, a dungeon just will come into my mind. I need to have at least a little bit of inspiration in order to jump off of. And the DM's guide has all of these tables where you can just create random rooms. Is it a lair? Is it a maze? Is it a mine? A mine. And you can roll percentage dice to be like, this is a kitchen. What's in the kitchen? Maybe the chamber state is that it is used as a campsite. And then that can get your brain rolling and being like, why was it used as a campsite? What's inside of it? You can roll the chamber contents. There's a trick inside. A trick? What's that? It's a brain preserved in a jar that contains an imprisoned creature. That's just random table. That's really cool. Anyways, if you're struggling to make dungeons, it is a great time to sit down and just roll on these tables and figure out what kind of dungeon you're gonna make. And some sort of narrative and story will come to your mind, even if you don't wanna just randomly create a completely random dungeon. Okay, Xanathar's Guide is probably one of my favorite D&D source books. Ever since it came out, it has added so many things that have made D&D so great and so fun, and there's so much I love about it. But I think the one mechanic that I use in this book consistently to this day is the downtime activities. Oh my God, they are so fun. Whoever wrote those downtime activities, I want more of them. There's not enough. We need more. There's so many and they're so cool and they're really interesting. In case you don't know about the downtime activities in Xanathar's Guide, there's a bunch, and they're just things that your character can do over the course of like a week, and they get benefits by the end of it. And these things include buying a magic item, cool. Gambling, awesome. Working just for money, great. How about crime? You can just commit crime. and it's a good time. You can do pit fighting, you can relax. Research is actually one of my favorite ones, and what I typically do is instead of writing up a bunch of random books and the players being like, okay, I guess I'll just read all these tomes. Instead, they spend a week, they spend money, they use intelligence, they help each other, and they get to learn pieces of lore. And the way that I rule it is that my players just ask me a question and I answer it to the best of my ability. So maybe they're researching mind flayers and they want to know if a mind flayer has a weakness. And they're like, okay, I want to learn one weakness of a mind flayer. And I would tell them that. There's not really any mind flayer weaknesses. Maybe destroy the elder brain. That might be a mind flayer weakness. But the other really cool part is that there's complications, so something can go wrong. And in the book, it details that you're supposed to roll a D100 and it's a 10% chance. I think that's boring. I think it's more fun if you just kind of let it happen sometimes. And the complications are great. Like a research complication is you accidentally damaged a rare book. That's a brand new situation or adventure even for them. Or like there's the crime complications. The crime one is really fun because they're all different. And so the crime one, depending on how well you do, is the amount of loot that you get, but also you get to like scope it out. So you get to know the DC before you do the crime. So it's like, do we want to hit this noble who's got a lot of money or this like poor merchant? We won't get as much money, but the DC's 10 and it'd be really easy. And if you fail too much, then you go to jail. You can also find out one of the complications could be your victim was financially ruined by your crime, or your victim asks one of your adventuring companions to solve the crime. And it's so good. It's just so much opportunity for game and adventure, and it's just in these tables, and I love it. There's a little book that was written by a bunch of people over on DM's Guild called Xanathar's Lost Notes to Everything Else, and I love it so much. While there is a lot of really cool stuff like subclasses and rule changes and critical miss effects, which are brutal and really funny, but just tables. I love tables. Tables are so much fun. My favorite part of this book that we still use to this day is page 54. It's called You Fireballed My Leg Off, and it's an expanded lingering injuries table. The way we rule it in our games is if you fall to 0 hit points and you took more than half of your health, you have to roll a Constitution saving throw of 15, and if you fail, you get a lingering injury. And the expanded table, in my opinion, is much better than the DM's guide, because the DM's guide is kind of just like, you have a wound and then you can cast Cure Wounds and then it's gone. But the Fireballed My Leg Off table, not only can you go from losing an eye to losing an ear, a nose, having blurred vision, you could break a finger. You can also get your teeth knocked out, but one of my favorites is 46 to 50, which is break an item. A randomly determined non-magical item you hold, wear, or carry on your person is broken or ruined. You roll a d10, and if it's a 1, it's a weapon. On a 2, it's an armor or shield. On a 3 to a 10, it's any weapon or item that isn't a shield. I just open up the player's character sheets on D&D Beyond and just scroll through their equipment and go, that's broken now. There are some that are in the higher percentage areas that are just like a festering wound, and as soon as you get magical healing, it goes away. But this is really fun for low-level play because sometimes magical healing isn't readily available all the time. We've had a lot of fun with it because it's really interesting to see your character go from like level 1 being pristine little adventurer to like level 10, and by the time they're level 10, they're missing fingers, they have scars, maybe they have a prosthetic arm now. It's crazy, and it's led to a lot of really interesting character moments and decisions, and you just use it. It's fun. It's a good time. The new Tal'Dorei Reborn campaign setting book is so cool. Some of the original book was reprinted, but look at how thick this boy is. There's so much more in this book than what was in the original, and I love it so much. But one of my favorite things that they put into this book that was in the original book is Matthew Mercer's Resurrection Rules. I know a lot of people are probably familiar with Matthew Mercer's Resurrection Rules, but we use it in our game, so I figured I'd detail it in this video. In the new Tal'Dorei Reborn book, it's on page 215. They actually detail a lot of optional campaign rules like accelerated rests, rapid quaffing, which I first read as rapid queefing, and there's 3 different resurrection rules which are really cool. One of them is harrowing return, and it has my favorite thing, a table. And you roll on this table to see what happens to your character when you come back to life. Things like having memories from the beyond, where your character knows what dying feels like, and you gain a level of exhaustion until you spend 30 days with forced downtime to make peace with your memories. Or opaque thoughts. You obsessively recall the sensation of life tearing you from the jaws of death. These ever-present memories fill your mind, making you immune to any effect that would sense your emotion or read your thoughts. pretty cool. But what I really like is the Fading Spirits resurrection rule, which is where whenever you cast something like Revivify or Raise Dead, in which the ritual requires a player to beat a DC in order to come back to life. And this DC starts off pretty high, but it can go down and become easier if other players participate in the ritual by giving offerings, or maybe intimidating the soul back into the body by yelling at them about how much of a good friend they are. What's fun about this is that it's a really cool roleplay moment where a character has died and everybody kind of has to remind themselves why they want them back. And while most of the time this does succeed in bringing the character back and just serves as a really cool roleplay moment to cast Revivify, we have had it fail before. And wow, it's crazy to go through those motions, which my players did, where they took the body of their ranger, where they dragged it across the coast and brought it to a city where they hired a cleric in order to cast Revivify. And as they all brought offerings and things that they had kept from this character to bring them back to life, to beckon them back into their body, to help them finish their mission and their quest, their soul stayed in the beyond. And it was really cool because, of course, it was Colton. Colton described how his character had made peace with death. He was with a lot of his family and his friends, and he didn't want to return back to his body. It was really sad. It was really bittersweet. But goddamn, I love role-playing games so much, and this rule just makes it a lot of fun. Speaking of Critical Role, The Explorer's Guide to Wildmount. Really cool book. I don't know if you guys have heard. It's pretty neat, pretty interesting. On page 190, this book details the Heroic Chronicle, which is a system that allows players and dungeon masters to work together to build a compelling character story. Gives characteristics for additional proficiencies, magic items, spells, and feats before the campaign begins. While I really like Xanathar's Guide's backstory table creation stuff, which I think is really unique and helps really flesh out a character before you start a campaign, the Heroic Chronicle is great because it adds a lot into the campaign. So Xanathar's Guide builds up all of this, while the Heroic Chronicle sets up a lot of things for the future of your character by giving you social status, relationships, homelands, while also diving in deeper into the world of Exandria and Wildmount. You've got your family size and whatnot, you've got the different settlements that you can come from, and then there's like relationships that you can have with characters, fateful moments, which are really neat, and just once again set up like a canvas for you to just paint away your character's story, who they are, and where they came from. To me, the Xanathar's Guide one does a really good job at creating like a D&D heroic character, while I feel like the Heroic Chronicle, which is funny because it's called the Heroic Chronicle, sets your character up as more down to earth with relationships with people and sort of sets them up as a person before they become this great and mighty adventurer. You even get to pick like favorite foods, and they listed a bunch of foods that are in different parts of Wildmount, and it's so great. I love it so much. There's also a mysterious secret. Prophecy. I highly recommend it if you're going to create a character within Wildmount, or you can just use it to create a character within your homebrew campaigns or even Forgotten Realms and just kind of replace some of the homeland stuff with what's already in the setting. It's really fun, it's a good time, I recommend it. Whoa, look at this, another Dungeons & Dragons book. Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft. I love this book a lot. It's got a really cool stuff for horror-themed games, but one of my favorite parts about this book, as my group's forever DM, is the genres of horror section on page 45. This part of the book has all of these different types of horror that allow you to create really spooky and scary games, but they're all themed and it's really fun. So for example, maybe you want to do an adventure or maybe a couple of games that are themed around body horror. Well, it gives you villains and monsters that are in Van Richten's Guide and in the Monster Manual, body horror torments, settings, adventure sites, and plots. Especially great for when you're a dungeon master, you're like, I want to make a spooky game about cosmic horror stuff, but I don't know how to do that in D&D. Well, here's a list of a bunch of stuff that you could use. Have fun. This is some of my favorite stuff. I'd like to see this in more books, just things that can kind of spur your imagination and get you writing and get you into creating the story with you and your players. Going more into the less story side of things and more into the player side mechanics of in the middle of the game and your player asks you a question and you're like, I don't know how you would know if a gelatinous cube can do that. Tasha's Cauldron of Everything has this really cool section in the back that I feel like a lot of people missed because it's in the back of the book and it's kind of a little hidden between everything else. On page 148 of Tasha's cauldron of everything, there is a section called parlaying with monsters. Maybe you don't want to kill that owlbear. Well, now you've got some tables and some rules and some ideas on what your players could do in order to not anger this owlbear, because an owlbear is technically not a beast, so an animal handling check won't work on it necessarily, but that's me being, oh, actually. But while that part is really cool, my favorite part is actually just this tiny little section right there. Monster research. Adventurers can research what a creature is likely to desire. Well, I do like likely to desire, and that makes sense. I sort of use it in the way of being like, I'm Geralt of Rivia, and I know that that's a griffin, and I'm gonna tell you everything about a griffin. A lot of my players like to do this. They like to be like, do I know anything about owlbears or gelatinous cubes or mind flayers? And what I normally do is just like, oh yeah, roll an arcana check. And they're like, could it be a nature check? And I'm like, I don't think mind flayers are natural creatures. So what this does is it takes each monster type and gives them an associated roll to learn more about them. Aberrations are arcana. That makes sense. Fae are arcana and nature, while giants and humanoids are history. Undead are arcana or religion. Plants are nature and survival. Monstrosities are nature and survival. It's great. It's such a good reference, especially when players are wanting to learn more about things. And it details a DC, which is 10 plus the creature's challenge rating, and that's really nice to just kind of have and be like, sorry, you don't know if lycanthropes can just one-hit kill you or not. Volo's guide to, oh God, my Volo's guide is, it's, she's a little crusty. I've had her for a while, and the cover, did not really hold up. One of my favorite parts about Volo's guide is the monster lore section that's right before the character races in chapter 1. I don't have any specific tables for you, but in all of these monster lore parts in this book that came out years ago, we've got beholders, giants, gnolls, goblinoids, hags, kobolds, mind flayers, orcs, and yuan-ti. Volo details how to roleplay each type of creature, and even goes as far to have flaws, bonds, personality traits, names, and physical features. You can even create a gnoll warband, and that's a lot of fun. Instead of just having regular gnolls that are just here to be gnolls, you can make them unique and different, and maybe have some that are outliers and some that have personalities, and overall they're not just slapped on with they're chaotic evil and they're all the same. It actually gives a lot of flavor to even like mind flayers who can be somewhat different creatures. I don't know, I'd like to see more about role-playing these types of creatures. I think that was a lot of fun, and also it was tables, and tables are the best. I love rolling on tables and being like, that's the thing I'm using and I'm gonna roll with that. Improv fun. Those are a bunch of rules that I like to use in D&D, and I hope that you found this helpful. If you have any rules that you really like, please detail them in the comments. I'm sure some people would love to see that. I would love to see that. I always love looking up new rules and different ways people play. It's what's so fun about the D&D communities, just to be like, oh, you use that thing, and now I use that thing, and there's nothing wrong with that. And that's what we all do. We create stuff when we like to make stories, and we like to have a good time. So have fun in your games. I love you. Go to bed on time tonight. All right.